up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here. I am thrilled to be chatting with writer and director Rosa Brooke, whose debut short film, Birthday Boy, is making waves on the festival circuit. It's got upcoming screenings at the Cleveland International Film Festival, Focus Wales Film Festival, the Kingston International Film Festival. It recently won the RTS Award for Best Entertainment and Comedy Drama. And it really walks this razor's edge between dark comedy and tragedy while exploring such universal themes of identity, visibility, and human connection. Rosa, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I can't wait to dive into this one.
Ah, thanks so much, Mike. That's really nice. That's lovely. It's really, really nice to chat to you as well.
So, Birthday Boy, like I said, it walks that fine line between
Mm.
tragedy and absurdity. How
Okay. That's good. I'm gonna use that line.
how did you decide on that overall tone so you could go darkly funny without losing the emotional
Yeah.
truth behind the story?
I'm so glad that you felt that from watching it because I feel like even now I've written it and directed and finished it, it's like I'm still like, is it funny? Like, are people gonna find this funny, or is it like, like, I really don't know how people will take it. So that's really nice because that is kind of what I was aiming for. Um, I think I always wanted it to be funny, but also it's not written around like jokes and gags and stuff. It's sort of hopefully I just kind of wanted it to be funny because of the natural tension and uncomfortable kind of feelings that are coming up between the family members. Um, so yeah, I don't because it's quite hard to aim at a specific tone. I feel like I just sort of start to write and you kind of find the tone as it goes, I guess. I'm glad you felt that way watching it. That's a good a good sign.
So your protagonist, Ray, their struggle with identity, it's so intimate and yet so universal. What drew you to this story, and how did you navigate portraying that it's so complex in a short format?
Yeah. Yeah, again, I'm glad you felt that way too. It's very nice because I'm sort of jumping ahead a little bit. We haven't done a public screening until Cleveland, so it's like I'm still getting used to people's reactions to it and how they're seeing it. Um, yeah, Ray is, I guess, quite a difficult character because I want like part of the point of the film is that they're not being seen by the people around them and they're not sort of they're trying to figure out their own identity, but it's almost getting pushed out of the way by, especially by their dad, by Jeff. Um, and yeah, he's a character. Um, and yeah, so part of their character is their kind of their gender identity, and they're trying to figure out who they are. And but we don't dive too deeply into it. There's in fact into any part of their character, and that's sort of the point because they are not even sure. They're still kind of working things out, but they're not given the space by the people around them to sort of for them to express that easily and to sort of understand it. Their whole kind of time is spent looking after everybody else, and so they're sort of being shrunk and sort of squashed, um, especially by their dad and his personality. Yeah.
And so this frustration, this tension,
Yeah.
and maybe this is, we spoke off camera about this, so I apologize if this is one of those deeper questions that I'm throwing you, lobbing at you. But, like you said, Ray feels, unseen by those closest to them, especially, the
Mm,
father.
mm,
Why do you think this tension, right? That idea of wanting to be seen yet feeling
mm,
invisible, that resonates so
mm.
strongly?
I think it is a very universal thing, and I think I like to find, or I hope that I can do this. I want to be able to do this, is to find like is to go very specific with characters and then find like a universal connection in that experience, right? Because whereas somebody watching it might not know what it's like to question their gender identity and what that looks like, I think they can find a point of connection in trying to figure out who I am, wanting people to see me like as I want to be seen, wanting to be understood by the people closest to us. Like I think those things can kind of build connections, even though the specifics are different. The the feeling of like this is who I am. Like, does anyone else see this? Like, and especially when it comes to family and your closest people, because you think they should be the ones who see us the most, or I think sometimes we want that the most, even when we can't get it. So, I think that is. I know that applies to me. I know it applies to a lot of people that I'm close to, and yeah, it's so interesting that question of how do you want to be seen and how much do you owe that to other people? How much do you need that from the people around you? How much should it just come from yourself? Like all those sorts of questions are what I was thinking about, I guess, when I was writing it. Yeah.
And as you started to put this together, like talking about your core four in the cast,
Yeah.
how did you collaborate with them to, shape this world and these emotional beats that you're in the midst of this tragic moment and then you throw something and you're like laughing out loud. Like,
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah, it's nice when people are laughing at it. It's the cast are amazing. Like the four sort of main family members. I'm so grateful to all of them because they gave us so much and like they really put themselves into the character into each of the characters. So we we got them involved sort of it was quite a short kind of obviously you on a lot of the time with shorts, so it's very low budget and it's very tight schedule. So but they still gave us like a rehearsal day. I mean, I just got the four of them in a room and we just were like, right, let's run this restaurant scene, let's be around the table together
right.
and let's like sort of build those dynamics. And I just had lots of phone calls with them as well, which was lovely because they all had so many questions about the characters and like the backgrounds. So much that I want that you can't fit into the film in terms of the script, or like in 14 minutes. But it's behind it. Hopefully you can feel that. Um, all these conversations that we had, yeah.
And the father, I feel like we all have one of those types in our family that just like talks a mile a minute and asks a million questions, but never hears a single response to
Yeah.
anything that's
Yeah.
asked. And I'm just curious, how much of all of that, and I don't want to spoil it because I'm very big on my brand is spoiler free, but
Okay. Okay.
I'm just curious, and people going to see the film, how much of all of that, especially at the table, was scripted, or was any of that coming up in the moment? I'm not sure that actor's experience with improv and how, but I was like,
Yeah.
there was just such a flow. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, he was amazing. Because the dad, so the Graham, the actor,
Grim.
he has so much dialogue. Like that's his
Yeah.
whole character, right? He's just talking, talking, talking. Um, so it was all I'd say 95% of it was all scripted.
Okay.
But obviously like oh that's how I feel anyway. I'm like definitely feel free to play with it and when you're doing so much dialogue it's also natural for it to sort of move around a little like over time. So I'd say most of it the majority of it was scripted. There's a couple of moments that he put in that or there's yeah, again, I don't want to give anything away, but there's a moment where he's repeating the same line over and over towards the end of the meal, and we just gave him like a couple of minutes to just play with that and he had some amazing ad libs that didn't get into the film, but he's I think once he found the flow, he was just
Yeah.
yeah, he absolutely nailed it. Yeah.
That's your blooper reel. You kind of release a gag reel maybe
Yes.
online once it's had its journey.
That's actually a great idea. We had some amazing, hilarious moments on set. Like, I'd love to do that. Yeah,
So, congrats. This is your debut short film, writing, directing, and
yeah,
that's enough of a job to tackle, but you also tackled editing the film.
yes,
So, being
yes,
because I guess you figured you didn't have enough to do. So,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
how did being both the writer and the director and the editor influence how you told Ray's story? Did it change your perspective on the scenes as you were shaping the final cut versus what you had started with? How was your process
Yeah.
getting to the 14 minutes we have?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I was definitely open to working with a separate editor, but things happened, schedules changed, and it was like, okay, I just need to do it myself. I think it's nice when you have someone else to edit because you can get a little bit of distance and come back and get different perspective on things. But I also do like editing quite a lot. So I was a musician before I did film, and it is like very musical to me, like very rhythmic. Like it's like a gut level thing almost, like when you're cutting and when you're so it was a lot of fun to edit it. Yeah, I think it always changes quite a lot in the edit. Like we usually it's just getting rid of things. Like there's just like a little bit too much. Like we had like at the restaurant scene is sort of the majority of the film, or about half the film, I'd say. And originally we had like a tracking shot at the beginning of that, like this long sort of almost like doing the Goodfellas thing. So we were like moving through the restaurant and people crossing and like, and it was cool. And it had more of the dad's dialogue over the top, kind of introducing the scene. But then when you see it, everything else, I think I kind of purposefully wanted the cinematography of the film to be quite, not to draw too much attention to itself. It's quite
Right.
straightforward in some way, which takes a lot of work in itself. Dan, our cinematographer, was fantastic. But yeah, instantly I was like, oh, we just need to get rid of that that like 45-second shot 'cause this doesn't fit with the rhythm of the rest of the film. Um, so that's probably the one of the biggest cuts. But I think you just find so like the nice thing when you're writing and then taking it all the way into the edit is that you've sort of been editing it in your head before you get to that point. So yeah, you're not sort of starting from scratch here. You're sort of going all the way through, and mostly mostly it stayed pretty consistent to how I imagined it at the start. Definitely is always a little bit different, but it was yeah pretty close, I'd say.
And so I was going to ask that with your background, excuse me,
Mm,
in music and production, as you were shaping this, how did you decide when? Because there were a lot of times when you chose to have like just all of the diegetic sounds happening and not include a lot of like underlaying music play. And then,
yeah,
we have the music in the restaurant as, that ambient sound.
yeah.
How did you choose when and where to layer these different, post elements in as you're going through this grief and chaotic family dynamic and
Yeah.
personal crisis and tragedy and
Yeah.
comedy?
Yeah. And comedy, yeah.
I keep coming back to the comedy. And
Yeah.
it's
So it's really cool to hear your feelings about it, from seeing it. It's like I'm really interested in that, like how it comes across and how what people are taking from it, because that side of it is new, obviously, for me. I know how I feel and how the people I've worked with feel, but yeah, mostly it's really interesting to hear that. Um, and now I forgot the actual question. Oh, the music.
well, it's about, music and different elements,
Yeah.
in the final cut and how you've used your background in music and production to shape it. You talked a little
Yeah.
bit how with the edit, but
Yeah. Um, so the composer, Carrie, yeah, she's actually someone I did music with a lot in the past. So I got her on board and she's amazing. I love her music style. But there's not too much composed music
yeah.
in the film because I kind of like I kind of like to be a little bit more minimal and hold back and then just bring it in. So there's a little bit it sort of builds in that restaurant scene. It's mostly like the diegetic music from the restaurant and the sort of the sounds going on around them. But the whole scene is like a bubble of tension for me. That's what I want to get out of it. So like slowly building and building. So our sound designer as well, he kind of layered, even as he was layering the sound effects and the sound of the restaurant crowd, and the other customers, like he very kind of subtly increased the fades and just brought in new layers of cutlery or like, you know, um, things that you never notice like up front, but hopefully it is kind of all adding to this sort of gradually building tension. And then we bring in the score just for the last, just for like maybe 30 seconds up to the climax of the scene. And I think, yeah, I think that's where it works well because actually, Carrie had written a piece that was about 3 minutes, so it went through much more of the scene before. But as good, like it's amazing music, but I felt like it only needed just the last little bit
Right.
to just subtly, yeah. So yeah, I was super pleased with what she did. I think she's great.
So now that you've got the first short finished and it's out there and it's having its
Yeah.
world premiere, and that is so exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
And while I'm sure you're on the whirlwind, I couldn't help but notice looking at IMDb that and your website, you have even more projects that are coming down the pipeline. So you don't even, you're kind of about to, and I appreciate that because I move a lot of wheels at the same time.
Yeah.
So thinking about Birthday Boy, what would you say has been a key lesson or insight you learned or a best
Mm.
practice that you want to take with you when you go into these future projects that you're working on? And what was something you learned that, you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try to skate by that one next time.
Ah, okay, interesting. So I think so there's yes, we do have a couple of other shorts that are actually in the final bits of pre post production. So hopefully they'll be coming out into the world at some point soon. Um but as far as lessons, I think from Birthday Boy, I think one of the biggest things I learned was how how much people are willing to help and being and like help you get and be involved with things if you're just genuine and ask. So like we because our budget was so we crowdfunded the film the majority and we it's quite a I think it's quite an ambitious script for the budget that we had. Um and we got people were so kind. Like again, it's hard. I don't want to give away the things that people did for us, but like, um, there's a couple of musical moments. I'll say that there's a couple of musical moments in the film, and those musicians were just like, yeah, we will. We just want to be a part of it. We want to be involved. Like we kind like one of them was also studying film at the time, and so and also I used to be a musician, obviously, so that connection was really nice, and they I mean they did amazing. Like it was such one of my favorite moments in the film. Um so I think that's one thing I've learned is like just to be a little bit cheekier when it comes to asking people. Like, you're not you want to value people's time and make them feel good and like they're part of something and they're and as much as we can offer people in terms of like for their time, like I really want to, but also just doing that ask, even reaching out on Instagram, we got so many people involved just through that. So that was really nice. In terms of what I would avoid, so there is there is an animal in the film. And it was I'll say yeah, but so we had a pet in the film and we it was challenging to film, but we did get an animal handler. So we had someone like professional doing it, which was without them it would have been way, way harder, I think. But it also I sort of understand a little bit more the whole thing of not working with animals now. It's like I think it worked out fine and like the Trevor who did the handling did a really good job for us and he was a proper gent. So but yeah, I'll just say cats don't like doing what you tell them to do. We can say that. So, it took
Fiercely
a lot of
independent
work in the edit.
creatures.
Yeah, that's true.
So, one more before I know I have to let you get going in a moment. After people, the audience, live in Ray's world through this story, what is something you hope people take away from the film? A conversation they have, an image that stays with them? What do you want people to take away and carry with them after they
Yeah.
watch?
Mm. Probably probably a couple of things. I think, I mean, I like the idea that people will take their own sort of thoughts away, I'm very curious what people do take and how they feel about the film after. Um, but I think the whole thing about the universal and the specificity, like for someone who's maybe doesn't know much about sort of gender identity stuff, for them to like be able to maybe connect a little with their experience, with Ray's experience in the film, and to feel some sense of connection and even just a little moment of understanding of what they're going through. That would be really nice. And then also I think I don't want to be I don't want to be like saying this is the message or this is the message, but I do think there is something about having to accept that you're not always going to get what you need from the people around you, and sometimes not it's just sometimes accepting that is the best thing you can do and finding that from inside yourself. And that's a hard lesson. I feel like that's something challenging to learn for sure, but I think that's what's gone into the film in the end, or for me anyway. That's Yeah.
Well said. Well, Rosa, thank you again taking the time to speak with me today. Congratulations again on Birthday Boy. Again, the film is screening at the Cleveland International Film Festival, as well as the Focus Wales Film Festival and the Kingston International Film Festival. Wherever you are on the globe, we'll include all of the links in the notes in the episode so you can try to catch tickets to see this. Rosa, again, enjoy Cleveland.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. It's been so nice to chat.
Yes, and as always, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please make sure you subscribe to the channel right here for more filmmaker interviews, festival coverage, and as always, spoiler-free reviews. Until next time, folks, this is Cinephile Mike saying take a break and watch something new.